Jesus Says I Am statements, the rotation for this spring. We have quite a few people that are here, as well as a few that are missing tonight. So if you have partners that are not here, if you can try and make connections with them before next week. I have the list so you can check those over as well. Trying to make connection as far as workshop leaders, checking in with the helpers, making sure you have everything here. Let's open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, as we gather together tonight as church school staff, guide our conversations that we may do your will and teach these young people as well as each other how to love you more. Pray these things in your Son's name. Amen. For some of you, this may be a little bit of a review, but I do want to go over a little bit about the servant staff. I use servant staff rather than volunteers, partly because it's you serving, and I couldn't do anything that I do here without you. And so being a team player together, working together, it's amazing when somebody can't be here, how you're able to fill in for each other and help out. It's very helpful. One of the things I look for when we have our servant staff working together is, if you are here, can you be authentic? Can you be here, present with the kids, present with each other? I know it's really hard when we have a lot of things going on in our lives, but to be present with the kids and very intentional in building our relationships with the kids and each other, that's part of who we are. And then remembering to attend to your own faith. This is a time for your learning as well. This rotation especially, it's a concept. Jesus uses the I am statements in the Gospel of John. And so we use that it describes who he is. And so it's a chance to not only look at just one particular story, but really the broader statements of what did Jesus say and how did he describe himself. Looking at the shepherds are with the kids all year long and taking attendance. I have been looking back at those attendance to kind of see if we have trends of kids that have been missing a lot. If you have kids that miss 2-3 times in a row, give me a short note so that I have a chance to maybe connect with those families. I do send out a staff note every single week. Those are in your mailboxes. There's a staff note for every staff member. So if you're in a workshop, there's going to be a staff note for every person, whether you're a workshop leader or a workshop helper. There'll be a staff note in there for you to take one copy yourself. Participating fully as shepherds, my expectation is that as shepherds, you're going to be sitting at the table with these kids, enjoying the conversation and enjoying the activity, helping out with that activity. It's so much, you're a role model. So for you to be at the table, doing the activity, participating, helping the kids next to you, walking around the table, not just standing off to the side. This is a chance for you to be interacting with those kids. Take a lead in that redirecting of any negative behavior. You know the kids better than the workshop leaders and helpers. So it's your chance to redirect any of that negative behavior. Building relationships, that's what this is all about. As shepherds, you have an opportunity to spend the year with those kids and build those relationships. And then also making sure that parent note gets home. Sometimes that's my only connection to families. And so it's really important, especially now as we start getting into the spring and we have announcements and things coming up, to make sure that parent note gets home. It's also an opportunity for us to send home, taking home faith ideas. What can parents do at home with their kids? And then communicating any concerns. I always tell people, don't tell me things on Wednesday nights unless you have it on a piece of paper that you can put on my desk. Even Sunday mornings, Wednesday nights, even in the middle of the week, if you just come up to me and say something, I'm not going to remember it. So laying a note in my mailbox outside my desk or on my desk, that's really helpful for me. And then reminding me, sending me a text saying, hey, just a reminder, I'm going to be gone tonight. That's really helpful for me. Workshop leaders, taking the lead in that teaching role. You get to teach that same lesson for these 5 weeks. However, there are those adaptations that we have for those younger students. With this rotation that you're going to see, there are some actual separate lessons, same concept, just different activities that are more age appropriate. Reading that staff note, it is, again, that's my opportunity to give you any feedback, or if there are announcements, say I have an activity or an event that's happening in that particular room the next day, and I need some help making sure that things are picked up, or I've taken out supplies for you for the kitchen, knowing where I can leave that announcement for you, it's going to be in the staff note. Reading that Bible story and preparing for this one especially, there are going to be the 4 different passages. So for you in your workshop, as a workshop leader, you're going to be the only one that teaches this concept in depth. The Tent Tales room is going to be an overview, but really you're the only one that's going to teach that statement to the kids. Again, communicate any concerns to me. As helpers, you assist in that teaching role. So again, if the workshop leader needs help passing things out, make sure that you're right there to help out. Be with those kids, helping those kids with those projects. Be familiar with that lesson in case the leader is gone. I'm not expecting you to be teaching that by yourself. However, it makes sense if you're the workshop helper and I have the workshop leader that's going to be gone, I can bring in another sub, but who's going to be more familiar with that lesson? So it would be really helpful if you're a workshop helper to be familiar enough with that lesson that you can at least explain it to the sub and know where supplies are and whatnot. Again, even as a helper, it's important for you to read that staff note. That's my connection to you. Any announcements, reading that Bible story, and then if you have any concerns, being able to communicate that to me. Again, we continue to use this rotation concept using the multiple intelligences. This one especially, we have a lot of activity happening in these workshops. The different workshops we have, I've listed anything from games and science, cooking, but for this one especially, you'll see that we are doing some science activities as well as some food activities, which the kids seem to really enjoy. For Jesus says, I am, this rotation itself, the I am statements, there are 10 of them that are found in the Gospel of John. It really is to proclaim Jesus as God's true Son and to give him an identity. The I am concepts really connects directly back to the voice of God in the Old Testament. If you think about the Moses and going up to the mountain to receive the 10 Commandments, there is the I am statements, or God is, it's oftentimes referred to. And so Jesus uses these I am statements in the New Testament to describe who he is and what kind of character he has. The theme for this rotation, the workshops that we're going to be using, we're going to be doing the Tent Tales. And in the Tent Tales room, that's an overview. And so you'll touch on not only the 5 or the 4 that the other workshops, but you'll also touch on a couple of the other I am statements that we don't do a specific workshop on. You'll talk about the Gospel of John they're all from the Gospel of John. You'll get a chance to do a life-size crossword puzzle along with lots of other activities. I have word puzzles and a few games as well as coloring pages for the younger kids that depict the different I am statements. For this one, this is the I am the gate, and it's in the Daniel's Discovery Den. This is our science room. I am the gate comes from John chapter 10, verse 7, and on the overview that you will receive that has kind of all of the statements, all of the scripture verses with it, you'll see that that's listed on there. This one will use activity using magnets. It talks about, Jesus describes himself as I am the gate for the sheep. It's part of the same section that Jesus talks about himself as I am the good shepherd. And it's not so much that he is keeping people out or keeping us penned in this little tiny gate, but it really is protecting us from the wolves. That's what the gatekeeper did, or what the shepherd did for the sheep, was really to keep the wolves out. It wasn't to keep the sheep penned into this tight place where you didn't have any free choice. It really was to keep the wolves out and to protect. So they'll talk about guiding. They'll use magnets to guide another magnet through a path, and how Jesus guides us and wants us to follow him. They'll get a chance to make a decorative door hanger to hang on their door back at home to remind themselves that Jesus says, I am the gate. The next one is the art studio, and it's the I Am the Bread of Life. Now this one is a little bit different in the fact that it comes from two different places, John chapter 6, verse 35, and then he refers back to it again in verse 48. And so pointing that out to the kids that he reiterates that twice in the same chapter is really important in the fact that bread is a staple to life. It is one of those things that you find across all the cultures, is bread as one of people's staple from the life. And so they are going to explore the different breads from around the world. So we have things like lefse and rye bread and corn tortillas and flour tortillas and cracker bread. And so they're going to get a chance to taste some of those. We do have a few that may be gluten intolerant, so it's going to be important to double check that to make sure that you talk to the shepherds ahead of time. But they're also going to get a chance to look at different grains that those come from, the wheat and the rye, the different grains that make those breads. They're going to make a puzzle to remind themselves that I am the bread of life. Then there's also another activity within that is a craft project that they can do. Anyone guess what this one is? I am the light of the world. This is in the Heart and Soul Kitchen. I am the light of the world comes from John 8, verse 12. And again, you can read a little bit more on that background. They're going to make stained glass cookies. These are really fun, but I found the dough like pre-made, so you don't have to make the dough. And I'm going to take it out because it's frozen in actual individual cookies. So all you're going to do is smash it down and make the holes for the stained glass. For those that are in the Heart and Soul Kitchen, I have cookies actually thawed, as well as the oven on for you to try and make that tonight. It only takes about 8-9 minutes to actually bake the cookies, but you're using lifesavers and you're crushing lifesavers up and then putting those in the holes to make stained glass. The concept behind that is obviously Jesus, you look at stained glass and it's really pretty, but it's not really truly pretty until you see the light shining through. And so Jesus shining his light through us. And then they'll also explore light and darkness using some flashlights while the cookies are baking. The last one that we have is the I Am the Vine. And this one is going to be in the casting lots. This one talks about how Jesus is the vine and there are branches and we are those branches, and what are we going to be doing as productive members of that vine. So that comes from John chapter 15. It's mentioned in verse 1 and in verse 5, and those verses between talk about how to be productive members of the vine. They're going to be playing games in this room in which it's important to stay connected to one another or work together as a team. There's about 4 different games that you can choose. If you have other game ideas, you can come talk to me. But those are games that they have to work together, talk to each other. It's a team activity, whatever the case may be. How it's important to stay connected to one another, staying connected to Jesus. The schedules are posted on every door. I also have them available here. They are in mailboxes as well. The music time on Wednesday at 4:15, we're going to stay all together for that music time like we have before, everybody all at the same time. Sunday music we will do right at the beginning like we've done in the past as well. The workshop time, if the lesson is finished early, in the workshops tonight you will see there is a cupboard that has all of the general coloring supplies. So you've got color crayons and glue and scissors and pencils. And in most of them, there's a second cupboard. And in that second cupboard is all of the themed activities. So that's where your supplies are. You're going to see that they're not laying out on the counter. They're down in the cupboard. Part of that is because our rooms are starting to be used by more people during the week. And so for us to be able to tuck those supplies away, it just keeps the room a little neater when we have our guests come into the rooms. And so there are extra activities. Every room has several different coloring pages or word searches or crossword puzzles to do. In the back of all of those binders, there are activities to do. What do I do if I have 5 minutes left or I have 10 minutes left? What do I do next? I encourage you to use those activities, be familiar with them. So if you are done, if you have idle hands of children that are kind of sugared up or really tired, it just isn't a good combination. So I try and provide as many activities so that when you do get done with your lesson, because sometimes groups get done faster than others. If you do get done, there's plenty of activities to do. If you're finding that the activities are not appropriate for your group, or you have a group that really struggled with them, come talk to me so that we can make sure that when they go to the next week rotation, I can try and have some things ready to go, or I can talk to that workshop leader ahead of time if they didn't seem to respond well to some of those activities. Being here like 10 to 15 minutes early, I know sometimes that's a little challenging. Part of it is that it keeps my blood pressure down. If I see that doors to workshops are still locked at 4:12 and we start at 4:15, and I'm not sure where people are, I get a little panicky, only because I need to be in about 3 different places at 4:15. And so it's really important if you can be here, even if it's a chance to look the staff note over, or to make sure that you have everything set so that when the kids come in, especially if you have the kids first, if you have the kids in there right away at 6:30, you can start right away and you're not having to dig out any of the supplies. Also, if you're finding that you need to do some prep work ahead of time, if things aren't going quite as smoothly, if you're here a little bit early, that helps. Again, the communications that I do have every week, one for a staff member in each of the mailboxes. The name tags, if you have a name tag and you still have it at home, because we were missing a few name tags when we did our count afterwards, if you could come let me know so that I could write that down so I don't make you a new one. Behind in the office door, behind this second office door, there's the magnetic board where you can put the name tags at the end of the day. That helps keep track of where those name tags are at. I know sometimes it's hard and you forget, I get it. But at the end, especially when I'm trying to do inventory and we're trying to make new ones, we don't always know where they're at. If you're going to be gone, the sooner you can let me know, the better. I really am trying to find people to fill in. I already have one sub ready to go for somebody who's going to be gone next week. So it's important if I know ahead of time, or if you can talk to a parent of one of the kids in that group and you say, hey, I'm going to be gone, can you fill in? Just let me know that ahead of time. You can leave a note in my mailbox. You can text me ahead of time. Any of that will be helpful. I'm going to just quickly go through this child safety policy. We do have a few new people. If you have not had a background check done, I have those background check forms up front here, as well as the child safety policy copy. If you don't have that completed or you're not sure, you can come ask me. It was, again, adopted by the council this last fall, and really to safeguard you and the students. The purpose, again, protect all of us. There is a definition listed within that policy. The people that are administrators of that are John, myself, and Pastor Nathan. I'm the only one, however, that sees any of the information that you fill out, your social security number and whatnot. That all stays with me locked in a cabinet. It does stay on file as long as you're serving here. So if you volunteer next year, I still have that stuff on file. It does stay locked. I'm the only one that has access to that. Within the policy, you'll see that we use the word children, youth, and adults, and those are the definitions for that. 5th grade and younger, basically anyone in our church school. We do have lots of youth that are working with our kids, both Wednesday and Sunday, and so we say that they need to be in 6th grade, and they need to be at least 3 years older than the oldest child they're working with. So we have a 6th grader working with kids. They can't be working with 5th or 4th graders. That's too close in age for them. So we spread them out. They need to be 3 years older. If they're in 9th grade, they are able to work with those 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. However, they must be 3 years older. So 9th graders can only work with the 6th graders. Those background checks are required. Again, satisfactory versus unsatisfactory. I look for the things I check for in those background screenings are the national database, criminal database, as well as the sex offender, and it does an address history for me. So if you've been in a state that doesn't report to that national criminal database, I'm able to go back in and do a county search. The only other time that I do background searches is if anyone is doing any driving. So we have people that work with our junior and senior high that drive our kids, or if you drive for Friday Night Live, I do a motor vehicle record check, and I do those annually for anybody who drives. Again, everyone, I screen every 3 years. So once you've been screened, it will be good for 3 years. The 2 adult rule, I've had people ask me, why do I have to have a partner? There's only 7 kids. Here's what happens is we have the 2 adult rule, and if I have 1 workshop leader and 1 shepherd, and my workshop leader has a sick child, and my shepherd was going to be out of town, then that leaves nobody. If I have a workshop leader and a workshop helper and a shepherd, and 2 of them are gone, that only leaves 1. And so having 4, and I know sometimes it seems like it's overkill, because you're like, well, okay, I only have 4 kids. Great, that means you can sit one-on-one and you have one-on-one conversations with those kids. Or you can bump to another room if another room needs help and has a really large class, and you can bump next door and say, hey, where can I help you out? That would be great. Those are, when you look at how when I've talked to other congregations about their rotation model, that is something that they do run into. If you don't have partners set up and those partners working together, especially during January, there were times where I had 13 people gone at one time at one rotation. So when you have, 10 workshop leaders and 6 of them are gone, that makes for a really tight night of staffing. The ratio of 1 to 16, wearing those name badges, again, that's one of those safety things of making sure that we have those. It identifies you as, yes, you are supposed to be in there. We have had new families that have come in that have said, well, how am I going to find you, Chris? Well, look for somebody that has a name badge on. They will know at least who I am and where to find me, or at least can lead you in the right direction to the office. I know I'm not easy to find on Wednesday and Sunday morning sometimes, but that does let them know that you are supposed to be there. We have had parents that come and say, well, who is that? Who is that? I don't know who that is. They're not wearing a name badge. So it's an identification piece. Transportation, overnight stays, and those really apply to the junior and senior high. Any allegations, report to myself, Pastor John, or Pastor Nathan. Those do say confidential. However, I'm a mandatory reporter, as well as Pastor John and Pastor Nathan as pastors of the synod. As a licensed teacher, I remain a licensed teacher, and so I'm a mandatory reporter. Those things we have to take seriously. Anytime you have a child that may say something that would indicate that they are not feeling safe at home, or that something has happened to them, bringing that to me so that we can go forward and make the decision. Once you report that to me, then Pastor John and myself, or Pastor Nathan and myself, would take care of that from there. Not saying that you wouldn't need to be called and say, hey, can you give us a little bit more information? Anytime a child says something that would indicate that they aren't feeling safe, asking questions like, well, what happened? Or who was with you? Or who lives at your home? Trying to get as much information about who was around them, what happened right before the incident, whatever that may be. That kind of information could be really helpful for us. A few important reminders. We do start on Sunday and next week. I can't believe it's been 6 weeks already since we finished the last rotation. May 17th. So if you count on the calendar, you'll see that Sunday's the 5th time is going to be May 10th. Because that's Mother's Day, we didn't want to do Kids Sabbath on Mother's Day. And so Kids Sabbath is going to be on May 17th, that next week, which means when everybody comes for Kids Sabbath, there isn't going to be classes going on or anything. We just get to do Kids Sabbath that day. That's also our neighborhood block party. We've had our end of the year carnival, typically on Wednesday nights, where we've done a big barbecue and had bounce houses. We've been known to have a couple bounce houses in the sanctuary. That's going to be happening on a Sunday this year. Part of it is that we're going to be doing a picnic. Hopefully it's going to be nice. That's the plan. That we will have 2 different bounce houses set up, as well as all of our carnival games. If we have to move it inside, we can, because we know we can fit all the carnival games in the classrooms. We have that mapped out. We hope to be outside. But those would happen from noon until 2, and then at 2 o'clock, the other piece of that is we're going to have a concert. And Pastor Nathan will be using that as part of his kind of goodbye for his sabbatical. So it's going to be a portion of the sabbatical piece for Pastor Nathan saying, you know, faith is better spent and life is better spent with family and friends. And so we are opening it up to our neighborhood as part of an outreach into the neighborhood and all of the people that live around us, but also a chance for the whole congregation to get together and have a good time. And so that will be from noon to 3. I'm not saying I might ask maybe 1 or 2 of you to help in certain ways, but don't worry, I won't get to that quite yet. Again, if you don't have any do not have your background forms, those need to be done tonight so I could get those completed before Sunday. Are there any questions? So the plan is workshop leaders and helpers. We have everything in the classrooms. If you're not sure where you're at, we can go over that and I can get you the information of where you're going to be and we can go from there. I'm waiting for Mandy to stop.